Trump is in the news again because
he's allowing.
Well, because his show, The Apprentice, is starting again in January.
Oh, yeah.
He held a big press conference to see if he was going to allow Miss USA, such a prestigious title. It's basically a model competition. Let's be realistic, okay?
What about peace in the world? They always want peace in the world.
They have one question in Miss USA.
And they always say,
I'd like to cure cancer and end world hunger. And then I'd like to go to Studio 54 and do some crack. She went to New York and she was hanging out at all the parties, doing what Paris and Lindsay do, you know, dancing, whatever. And so he held a press conference to announce whether or not she was going to retain her crown.
Brilliant.
And there he is, hair looping, going, everyone deserves a second chance, and I'm going to give her a second chance.
If you thought the feud between Rosie O'Donnell and Donald Trump ended when he was out of the White House, think again. Rosie just aimed her sharp tongue at Don Jr. and Eric, and let's just say they didn't take it well. What exactly did Rosie say, and why are the Trump brothers so rattled? Let's break it down. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Remember 2006? It feels like a lifetime ago, but that year gave us one of the strangest, most bizarrely entertaining feuds in pop culture history. Picture this. Rosie O'Donnell is sitting at The View's infamous table, delivering her signature brand of snarky, unfiltered commentary. She wasn't pulling any punches as she went after Donald Trump, who at the time was neck deep in a scandal involving Miss USA. Back then, Miss USA, Tara Conner, had been hit with allegations of drug use and partying a little harder than her pageant crown might have allowed. Trump, who co-owned the pageant, responded by not dethroning her, but holding a peculiar press conference about second chances. Rosie, of course, couldn't resist on...
One of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women.
And Celebrity Apprentice was not true. And Mark Burnett has tapes of him calling people every racist word in the world, telling women to get down on their knees. He is a cruel, criminal, and mentally unstable man.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
The View, she mocked Trump's self-righteous tone, calling the moment a calculated stunt designed to grab headlines and cast himself as some kind of moral authority. She wasn't exactly gentle about it either. She laid into everything about him, from his business ethics to his vanity. She even mimicked his stiff, almost cartoonish mannerisms and that impersonation, an instant viral moment back when going viral usually involved grainy YouTube uploads. In classic Trump fashion, he didn't sit quietly in the wings letting it blow over. Oh no, he went nuclear. Trump fired back immediately, but rather than addressing the points Rosie raised, he chose to take the low road, and I mean low. He started with comments about her appearance, calling her disgusting both inside and out. He referred to her as a loser, mocked her weight, and even suggested that her partner must have been either desperate or blind. It wasn't just personal, it was juvenile.
Donald Trump represented something that was very important to Barbara, okay? Titan that she was, and her legacy should be long and strong. He had social standing in New York City. A new book says Rosie felt so betrayed by Walters that it prompted her to quit the show just a few months later. Trump got published in the Post. Walters, he says, called Rosie a pig and said that she was going to get her fired. Now, Barbara Walters said that never happened. He called her a liar.
Something straight out of a middle school argument. But Rosie, she knew exactly what to do. Instead of stooping to his level, she doubled down with humor. On air, she skewered everything from his years of alleged bankruptcies to that utterly unmissable swirl of yellow cotton candy he called hair. Oh yeah, she went there. The insults ping-ponged in public for weeks. Trump kept ranting about how irrelevant she was, while Rosie used his over-the-top rage as material for more clever comebacks. By this point, it wasn't even about the Miss USA scandal anymore. It had turned into a weird mix of a roast and a reality TV subplot, a very public ego showdown. Their insults weren't just insults. They told you a lot about these two personalities. Trump's jabs always punched low, focusing on the physical and the personal. But Rosie, she had this way of threading humor with facts, aiming for the kind of digs that were not only funny but also pointed enough to sting.
He is a cruel, criminal, and mentally unstable man. I expect nothing but the lowest bar for Donald Trump, and you know, every single day he just grants my perception of him as correct. By his actions, by his word. And I think he's the worst thing that ever happened to the United States. And his cruelty knows no bounds.
Take one of their earliest exchanges, for example. Trump loudly declared that Rosie had no talent, no career, and no future. Standard stuff for him. Her response? She joked about how Trump's hair seemed more believable as a sentient being than Trump himself. It was lines like that, delivered with a mix of sarcasm and charm, that made her remarks hit harder. They weren't just schoolyard taunts. They were cutting observations dressed up as jokes, as people noticed. This wasn't just some celebrity spat. It became a masterclass in how Trump handles criticism, or more accurately, how poorly he handles it. While Rosie could laugh it off with a sharp one-liner or two, Trump's ego always drove him to escalate, and the moment he responded, it fed right back into her hands, giving her more material every single time. But it also became bigger than Rosie and Trump's personalities. To some, Rosie represented the freedom to call powerful people out with humor and wit, a say-it-like-it-is kind of spirit that felt refreshing in a world of cautious PR polish commentary. Trump, on the other hand, showcased his signature approach to confrontation: blow it out of proportion, make it deeply personal, and never, ever admit fault. Their early feud painted a clear picture of Trump's playbook, a template he'd go on to expand in politics, business, and beyond. Another layer of intrigue came from how long this drama seemed to stay on Trump's radar. Even years after the initial blowup, he couldn't resist bringing Rosie up in interviews or on Twitter. For someone who branded himself as a winner, too busy to deal with critics, he sure spent a lot of energy thinking about her.
He is the kind of person that is a grifter, and he is an evangelical preacher to people who believed that Celebrity Apprentice was true. And humiliated and embarrassed, he has no control, and he goes apeshit. Can I say that?
Yeah, you just did.
Mark Burnett owns the cache of all of Trump's sickness, and he refuses to release it.
Rosie, for her part, had moved on to other projects, but she knew how to poke the bear when she wanted to. Every time she did, it worked like a charm. Trump would spiral into a rant, and audiences got another round of free entertainment. And speaking of poking the bear, little did anyone expect that this feud would grow beyond its original participants. Fast forward to now, and the next generation of Trumps, Don Jr. and Eric, have entered the ring. Both sons, eager to defend the family name, have repeatedly jumped into the back and forth. And wouldn't you know it, they've proven to be just as thin-skinned as their father. But Rosie? She's not pulling punches with them either. Her insults may have shifted targets, but they've only gotten sharper with time. Rosie's latest targets aren't Trump himself, they're his two sons, Don Jr. and Eric, and trust me, it's getting messy in the most entertaining way possible. Rosie, who's clearly mastered the art of skewering the Trump family, recently let loose with some brutal but undeniably hilarious commentary. For Don Jr., she described him as a caricature of himself, with the energy of a guy who just realized the party ended 2 hours ago, but he's still doing shots at the empty bar. Now, close your eyes and picture it. Doesn't it just fit? Meanwhile, Eric didn't escape unscathed either. She called him the human equivalent of an ellipsis, basically painting him as the perpetual afterthought of the family. Fans of Rosie's humor ate it up, and those lines quickly picked up steam online. But predictably, the Trump brothers didn't find it funny, not even a little. Don Jr. jumped in to defend the family's honor, or at least tried to in typical Trump fashion. He shot back with dismissive jabs of his own, calling Rosie washed up, and claiming she was obsessed with our family. Right, because this is totally the first time a Trump has ever brought her name into the conversation. Don Jr.'s attempts to clap back didn't exactly scream originality though. If anything, his responses reeked of insecurity, and it didn't go unnoticed. The irony here is that while he accused Rosie of being irrelevant, he spent so much time addressing her remarks that it only gave her more attention. It's almost like she knows exactly how to bait them every single time. Eric's response, on the other hand, felt muted in comparison to his older brother's Jr.'s predictable theatrics. But when he does speak out, the defensiveness is impossible to miss. It's almost as if being called the forgotten one hit a little too close to home. Can you blame him though? Between Don Jr.'s constant attempts at being the family's chief spokesperson and Ivanka being, well, Ivanka, it's not hard to see why Eric might feel a bit overshadowed, and Rosie just aired that to the world in a single witty punchline. That's what makes her humor work so well. It doesn't just make you laugh, it pokes at something deeper. Here's the thing about Rosie's knack for insults. She knows exactly where to aim. It's not just about taking cheap shots. Sure, she'll throw in a jab about someone's quirks or personality, but then she follows it up with a line that cuts to the vulnerability all the bravado is trying to hide. Don Jr. calling her washed up. It only reinforces her point about his craving for relevance. Eric getting worked up over a comment about being overlooked. It plays perfectly into her narrative of him being insecure in his role. That's the brilliance of Rosie's strategy. She doesn't just land a punch, she makes sure it stings long after. Well, it comes down to one thing. She knows exactly how to get under their skin, and she does it with style. That's the brilliance of her humor. It doesn't attack randomly, it always has a target, and it always lands. This approach goes far beyond Don Jr. though. Rosie has taken the same scalpel to Eric, calling him the human equivalent of an ellipsis. That one? Brutal. But like her comments on Don, it's more than just a clever line. It taps into what everyone already suspects, but maybe hasn't said out loud. Eric's existence in the Trump orbit often feels like an afterthought, a filler, or the guy you call in when literally everyone else is busy. These are insults that don't need to be explained because the joke comes preloaded with context. That's why they hit harder. They're not creating a narrative, they're confirming one. Compare that to how the Trump family handles their critics. Donald Trump's default setting has always been to aim low. His attacks fixate on appearance, weight, or the favorite line. Loser. It's the verbal equivalent of a toddler throwing a tantrum, loud, repetitive, and lacking in creativity. Rosie, she doesn't just aim, she dissects. Her insults are intelligent, well-timed, and most of all, memorable. While Donald might call someone disgusting, Rosie will craft a whole sentence that stays with you, and the Trump brothers, for all their attempts to mimic their father's abrasive style, just can't match the precision of her word. Rosie's humor works because it bypasses the Trump's usual defenses. Let's face it, we've seen their tricks. When someone gets serious about critiquing them, they usually jump to one of three moves. Dismiss it as fake news, turn themselves into the victim, or start threatening lawsuits. But you can't sue a joke, and you can't accuse sarcasm of being fake. By leaning on comedy, Rosie manages to call out their behavior while sidestepping the drama they thrive on. She leaves them exposed, fumbling around for a response that doesn't make them look even worse. And here's where it gets even better for Rosie. Their responses almost always backfire. Every time Don Jr. or Eric lashes out, they just make themselves look more defensive, which of course feeds right back into Rosie's point. Remember when Don Jr. tried to call her obsessed with their family? Instead of shutting her down, all it did was reinforce her earlier joke that he's desperate for attention. It's a vicious cycle for the Trumps, but a comedy goldmine for Rosie. Every rebuttal just gives her more material. It's like handing a comedian their own punchline. Part of what makes this so effective is the relatability of it all. Rosie's humor catches onto things that most people already see. When she mocks Don Jr.'s attempts to stay relevant or Eric's perpetual second string status, it resonates because she's saying what everyone else is already thinking. That's a hard power to combat, especially when your audience is already nodding along and laughing at the same time. Rosie has this unique ability to frame the Trump family's most glaring insecurities in a way that's both hilarious and devastatingly accurate. The real edge she holds, though, goes deeper than jokes. It's her ability to chip away at the Trumps' overly inflated image of themselves. Unlike everyday critics who might fade into oblivion after a single news cycle, Rosie's comments linger. They become quotable, repeatable, and impossible to forget, which only extends the impact of her humor. She doesn't need to fight the Trumps' bravado with more bravado. By leaning on wit, she undermines them in a way that feels far smarter, and ultimately, far more damaging. This isn't just entertaining shade though, there's a bigger picture here. Rosie's approach almost perfectly symbolizes a cultural clash. On one hand, you've got a comedian who uses irreverence and authenticity as her weapon. On the other, you've got a family that thrives on the illusion of control, desperately defending a bubble of success, power, and influence, even when cracks show through the surface. Rosie refuses to play by their rules, and that's exactly why they can't beat her. In the end, this is about more than just a public brawl. It's about two very different ways of looking at the world, one that leans into humor and truth, and another that gets lost trying to outrun its own vulnerabilities. And as long as Rosie keeps cracking jokes and the Trump family keeps reacting, this feud isn't going anywhere. Of course, with the way her humor works, why would she want it to? The Trumps keep giving her fresh material, and she just keeps sharpening her knives. Every step of this saga proves one thing: Rosie isn't just calling them out, she's winning. Rosie's nearly 2-decade clash with the Trumps isn't just about trading insults. It's bigger than that. It's a battle between two worlds, one powered by humor and authenticity, and the other fueled by ego and constant defensiveness. While the Trump family clings to wealth and influence, they remain powerless against smart comedy. As the saying goes, comedy is the great equalizer, and nobody wields it better than Rosie. Her sharp wit strips away the flashy image, exposing cracks they'd rather keep hidden. So as long as she keeps laughing and they keep reacting, this saga isn't ending anytime soon.